I was talking with Steve Millington in the last hour of the program, and I referenced this column in National Review, and I wanted to share a little bit of that with you too as well today, just because I think it sums up. Since I was talking about why people are angry in this country, at least a portion of. Well, look, it's not just on the American right. Why do you think Bernie Sanders is polling so well on the American left? I mean, the guy's practically a national socialist, and yet people on the left are just showing up in droves to hear him speak. And he looks like an old absent-minded professor. There's nothing telegenic about him or charismatic, and yet people are turning out in droves. So yeah, when you say people are angry, mainstream media gets it wrong. People are angry on all sides at this point in this country. They don't like to admit it. Tea Party movement and Occupy demonstrators certainly had different views of government and how government should perform, but they both come out of that deep-seated notion that something's wrong in this country. 934, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. 77 already. That AC unit is just going over and over and over again today, wheezing at home, I'm sure, and it will be that way throughout the rest of the day. If you'd like to reach our program, you can also give us a telephone call. It's 736-0300, 736-0300. Ian Tuttle, writing at National Review, and he's referencing something that he read from Politico. Now, Politico is a fairly left-leaning outfit. In fact, during 2008, they never apologized for backing Barack Obama. They wrote an editorial, one of the editors did, said, so what? The fact that they were in the tank for him, so what? But he's quoting a writer at Politico who says, these Trump acolytes in general are not racist against Latinos and they have not been seized by madness. They are, however, angry, very angry, and many are agonizingly fearful about the future of the nation. They believe that vast changes to the country are being wrought in ways that are undemocratic, dishonest, and perhaps even illegal. Well, we just heard somebody talking about illegalities when it comes to Planned Parenthood. All of these things go on in the background and no one seems to do anything about them. Oh, we'll hold hearings. We'll make a lot of noise and then we'll forget it. You're on the air at 9:35. You're on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX.
Yeah, I wanted to expand a little bit on telling people to get down on their knees and pray. I don't think they believe in God or they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. But us Christians need to get down and pray too for ourselves in this country. I personally have stood outside Planned Parenthood over the years on different occasions.
Me too.
And a peaceful, prayerful deal. But the one phrase, I can't remember who coined it, all evil needs to succeed is for good men to do nothing.
I believe that might have been Burke, but my memory may be a little shallow there too.
And it seems like we've got to, the Christians, good people, whatever, we've got to quit doing nothing and start doing something, or yeah, we're going to be in big trouble.
Agreed. Very much agreed. I had a friend who was a evangelical pastor at an independent church, and one day he was on the radio with me, and he just simply said, you know what? We're not going to change anything by law in this country by the looks of things. We need to change men's hearts. How do you do that? Through prayer. Well said. 937, 77. Bill Colley with you on Top Story, and you're on the air.
Well, good morning. Hey, I don't know that Trump will ever make president or anything, but the thing I really like about Trump being in there, he's going out there and he's saying what he thinks, whether it's right or left, and all of these other Republican people that want to be president, Trump's drawing a line out there, and everybody else is going to have to is having to draw a line on one side or the other of Trump, and the conversation is good because it's making people make choices.
I agree, and the thing is when you go after John McCain, he was being a rather difficult person too, calling people names. Somebody refers to John McCain as being a second grader the way that he reacts often. Yes, he was a hero 45 years ago, but again, I made the point yesterday, after the Battle of Saratoga, the greatest hero of the American Revolution happened to be Benedict Arnold. You don't necessarily stay a hero. Currently, John McCain is a weasel. Let's be honest about that. I remember John McCain, 2008, was doing an appearance in Cincinnati, Ohio. And there was a talk radio host in Cincinnati by the name of Bill Cunningham, who's in syndication, he has a weekend show, but he has his main gig is on a big blowtorch of a station in Cincinnati. And he was brought on stage to introduce John McCain. Now, a lot of Republicans, especially conservatives on the radio, were never comfortable with McCain, but after they knew he was going to be the nominee, they thought, we've got to get behind him because we've got a socialist running as a Democrat. And on stage, in the warm-up, Bill Cunningham refers to Barack Hussein Obama, which, by the way, is his name. In fact, somebody said he's got another one. It's Barack Hussein Muhammad Obama. But Barack Hussein Obama, it's his name. It's supposedly on whatever birth certificate he can produce. And then John McCain comes out and says, well, I got to apologize. I don't think it's right to use the name Hussein. Well, it's his name. Well, that's mean. And McCain said, I would rather lose the presidency than have people think that I'm implying the president is a Muslim. My middle name is Robert. So what? It's what's on my birth certificate. We've got more coming up. Got to save my voice a little bit. Trying to impersonate John McCain. Wow. I need a glass of water. No wonder the guy's so off kilter all the time. 20 minutes from 10 o'clock, 77. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story. Are you a senior citizen? Do you own firearms? Well, if Barack Obama has his way, Barack Hussein Obama, maybe not for much longer. Are you a senior citizen who happens to own, perhaps, firearms? The Daily Caller, that's Tucker Carlson's outfit, has been looking into. Well, this is a new development in a story that it uncovered some months ago. The Veterans Administration was going around telling the FBI and the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Well, of course now it's BATF or whatever, much longer name, and they've thrown in a few other things in there too as well. But ATF, traditionally known as Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the VA was saying, we've got some people we're treating, veterans we're treating, and they're having a hard time managing their money. And because of that, the ATF was denying them the ability to own. Well, they were going around seizing sometimes firearms from people. In other words, the doctors at the VA were saying, well, if this guy can't manage his money, then he's going to have a problem. Who knows? He'll probably go out and be a bank robber. Well, that program has been expanded. The Obama White House, according to the Daily Caller, has decided that senior citizens who can't manage their money should also be denied firearms. Yeah, I guess Granny and Grandpa are going to be out riding around the countryside like Bonnie and Clyde, sticking up banks because they need the money. At least that must be the impression of the Obama White House. The Daily Caller first reported on a government program in which the VA sends veterans' medical information to the FBI to disarm them. Now we know that the enforcement agency ATF is working with the VA and the FBI to suppress information about that program. And now they're expanding all of this to include senior citizens. Now look, I know people. My mother, it's a very sad story, when she retired after many, many years working in a factory. She retired from the job, and we were shocked that she didn't have a lot of money saved because she'd had a pension plan, and we know that she wasn't living high on the hog by any means. She and a friend liked to go to a casino every couple of weeks. They wouldn't gamble. They just went because they liked to go eat at the buffet. I'll never forget her telling me they went to Niagara Falls to this massive casino in Niagara Falls, Ontario, and they got lost after they went to the buffet line. They couldn't remember where they sat. That's how big the restaurant was. But they would go there to primarily eat. That was their weekend outing. They'd go on a Saturday afternoon, and then they'd come home. And she didn't otherwise spend a lot of money. But she was living primarily on Social Security. We later discovered that she had been sending large amounts of money to my wayward brother for many, many years. And he did not ever, he used family not like a loan institution, but more like just a bank. And it's unfortunate, but she was left with very little money in retirement. She had to go back to work. And she actually went back to work at a local McDonald's. And she was told, well, if you work under 30 hours a week, you won't lose your Social Security. And then the restaurant liked her work so much that they wanted her to be there 40 hours a week. She was beside herself because of all of that. The fact of the matter is, though, there are people out there who have those circumstances. In that situation, my mother would have been denied ownership of firearms because they would have said, well, obviously you didn't manage your money well. How do we get there in this country? There's nothing in that Second Amendment that says you have to manage your money well in order to bear arms. That's a God-given right as well. It's not no man can give you a right because man can take that right away. This is a God-given right. So therefore, no human being at the ATF, the FBI, or at the White House can interfere with that. It does not say anything about managing your money. In fact, there's nothing about money management whatsoever in any of our founding documents. And yet here you have the goons working in the federal government, the jackbooted thugs at the behest of the White House, who apparently are going to be sent out to confiscate firearms from various retirees. How did we get here? And why is this not being reported by any larger organizations? Because they don't want people to know. They are protecting the White House. It's a bit like, and the White House treats media miserably. It's a bit like Stockholm Syndrome, though. They apparently think that they have to be treated miserably and that the White House has to treat everyone else that way. We are fast on the road to totalitarianism in this country if we already aren't there. And very few people are holding up a sign saying, stop. We got talking about Donald Trump a couple of times this morning. Is he the answer? No. But I do hope that he encourages somebody else to realize, you know what? I can capitalize on this public mood, and I can bypass the media. It might be someone who's a little bit better with the way, because Trump talks off the cuff. That's why he gets in trouble. He corrects himself, but then by that time, the media takes just the first little sliver of what he said and ignores everything else that he said and says, aha, you see what type of heel he is? Well, we need someone who's as blunt. We were talking about Ronald Reagan earlier. Ronald Reagan was incredibly blunt. I paid for this microphone, Mr. Breen. Remember that? 1980 in New Hampshire. He had paid for a debate. He had paid for the debate. Not the party, not the other candidates. And the moderators started telling Reagan how it was going to work. And Mr. Reagan said, no, 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 no. Or the time he called reporters SOBs while he was on mic. You know what? People said, well, he must be losing his mind. Or perhaps he was very calculating and knew exactly what he was doing and what the public reaction would be. We begin bombing in 5 minutes. Remember that one with his weekly radio address talking about the Soviets? Of course you do. That wasn't a mistake, my friends. That was sending a message. Mike Gallagher, brought to you exclusively by the financial advisors at Waddell and Reed in Twin Falls, 736-6563. 6 minutes away from 10 o'clock, we are wrapping up today's edition of Top Story with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Well, we're expecting to be joined in a couple of days on the program by Governor Butch Otter. His office says they're looking forward to a conversation with us. Actually, we'll be talking with him primarily about the budget surplus that somehow came about in Idaho without I guess anybody really expecting it, and it was somewhat large, maybe not compared to the entire budget. But that'll be a topic for discussion when he joins us in the next few days. Also want to point out, coming up following this program, Rush Limbaugh, there we go, we'll get it out. He'll be along, he's only the best-known guy in talk radio history, or maybe radio history, so we should be able to pronounce his name. He'll be along following news at 10 o'clock from Fox. Sean Hannity following the news at 1 o'clock from Fox. Also coming up a little later in the day, Glenn Beck's program. Again, Glenn is off because of some vocal cord issues. Resting those. He's expected back in the next couple of weeks. Dave Ramsey tonight and overnight will have Coast to Coast with George Norrie. Bill Colley with you again on the air this morning, and I want to thank you for taking some time out for us, as you do on most days, I would suspect. And if you like the program, please spread the word. Let your friends know. I have some friends who listen online all over the country, and sometimes I get some rather unique responses from them during the course of the program, and they're always a little bit surprised by how this part of the country is so, how shall we put it, traditional and blunt spoken. It's called flyover country by a great many people. There was a writer in the Washington Times today who told a story about how in Washington people are getting gunned down on what used to be a safe subway system. And how a man who was dying of a heart attack across the street from a firehouse, nobody would come out of the firehouse to help him out. This guy says, I went on a fishing trip recently. I went to Montana. And he says, I went to Montana and one of my friends got bitten by a large rattlesnake. And we were waiting for someone to airlift him to a hospital. And he said, all of a sudden, all of these vehicles started pulling up on the hill where we were waiting. And they ended up with 4 nurses there helping treat the guy. They just came because they heard about that situation. He said, compare that with what happens in Washington, where a paramedic can't be bothered to walk across the street to treat a heart attack victim. And that's an amazing thing about this part of the country, the Northwest, at least until you get to the coast, which I'm sure is just as bad as, well, Seattle, Portland. We already know by reputation what they're like. And San Francisco, but here in this part of the country, this is still, I think, the best part of the country when it comes to people still holding on to traditional values. I have a couple of things quickly I'm going to reference before we wrap up the program today, which I hope to do again tomorrow. God willing, the creek don't rise. But some days I walk out of here and I wonder, did I offend so many people, or who did I offend that might be very powerful? You've always got to keep that in mind at talk radio. But I found this today. This is from a liberal writer by the name of Russ K. Baker. He is a professor at Rutgers University in New Jersey. And he is writing, I found this at Real Clear Politics, great source for information. He says, people are writing off the Republican Party and traditional Americans, he says, but get this. Populations of minorities do not equal voters, who are namely Democrats, right? And growth in a demographic group will not necessarily cause a commensurate upsurge in likely votes from those groups. The very groups, he writes, thank you, Mr. Musician in the background, the very groups predicted to swell the numbers of Democrats are also those least likely to show up at the polls. Well, you know what? Offer them an order of chicken wings and they'll never make it. On the other hand, if someone offers them the chicken wings to go vote, we've got a problem. Over at the Wall Street Journal, big front page lead story today. Democratic Party machinery shows rust. And what they've done is they've gone around the country talking with people on the local level. Yes, Democrats may have electoral margins when it comes to electing presidents that look pretty good. But across the country, they are losing state house after state house after state house. Entire state legislatures in some states that were not long ago controlled by Democrats are now controlled by Republicans, both houses. And at the local level, it's even worse for the Democrat Party. It has no bench. It may have the votes. They've got no one to vote for. News is coming up next from Fox. Thanks for joining me today on News Radio 1310, KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com.